The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Ready to mask up. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President-elect Joe Biden says he plans to ask Americans to take that one big step to slow the coronavirus.
I'm going to ask the public for 100 days to mask. Just 100 days to mask. Not forever, 100 days.
Mr. Biden speaking on CNN, saying he'd be willing to get the vaccine early to inspire public confidence in it. President Trump has offered to be inoculated as well, as have former Presidents Obama, Bush, and Clinton. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers may be closer to a compromised coronavirus relief bill.
There's traction for Congress to approve a bipartisan $908 billion coronavirus stimulus measure. Extra unemployment benefits could expire for 14 million Americans later this month. The president appears supportive of the effort, but the bill's backers aren't certain. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had pushed for a $550 billion bill. He said that was the only plan which the White House could accept, but McConnell says, quote, compromise is now within reach. He's open to other plans and talked with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. But some Republicans doubt the bipartisan bill could overcome a filibuster. Lawmakers know this is a last-ditch effort.
Fox's Chad Pergram, a judge in Carson City, Nevada, has heard arguments in the Trump campaign's lawsuit claiming fraud in that state's election. Not clear when the judge will rule. Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel defending the continuing court challenges. On Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum.
I think COVID gave a cover for Democrats to strip election integrity. I was saying that when it was happening back in August.
Georgia state lawmakers holding a hearing on alleged irregularities in the election night counting in that state, including surveillance video that seemed to show workers pulling out cases of ballots after everyone else had been told to leave because of a reported pipe burst at the counting center. Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp now says he supports calls for a signature audit. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
California's COVID restrictions on religious gatherings now being scrutinized by the U.S. Supreme Court.
In May, the liberal Ninth Circuit ruled that the state's order could limit or ban in-person religious services. The stay-at-home order said that it did not violate the First Amendment. That's what the Ninth Circuit said. But today, the U.S. Supreme Court overruled that and ordered the trial court to re-examine those restrictions on indoor religious services. The order leaves California's restrictions in place for now, but revives the case by Harvest Rock Church, along with several others in the state, to now go forward. This follows last week's 5-4 decision in which the court said New York could not enforce limits on church and synagogue attendance. California claims that singing and chanting indoors fuels the spread of COVID. The church says that the First Amendment prohibits government from restricting the size of religious gatherings.
Fox's William Lajeunesse, a computer hacker serving 20 years for giving the Islamic State group personal data on 1,300 government and military personnel, is out of prison. A federal judge granting Ardit Farizi compassionate relief because of the coronavirus. Asthmatic and overweight, Farizi will be quarantined for 2 weeks, then deported to Kosovo. Just what we need to end 2020 with: shiny objects to distract us.
The monoliths keep popping up. A third steel-looking structure had been spotted protruding from the zenith of a California hiking trail about halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco. The silver structure appeared to be about 12 feet tall, but there was no time for exact measurements. As suddenly as the latest monolith appeared, it mysteriously disappeared. Someone apparently hauled it away. 2 other monoliths have been spotted elsewhere, one in Utah Utah and one in Romania. The structures quickly turn into tourism lightning rods as they remind many onlookers of the monolith featured in the classic movie 2001, A Space Odyssey. Tom Graham, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Kellogg. This is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show, starring Senator Mana Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mana Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today, like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson stream of consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
We all need to fight COVID-19, and we need all the weapons we can get to beat it. Your smartphone can be one of the most powerful tools to battle this pandemic. The Guam COVID Alert Exposure Notification app can let you know if you've been exposed to someone who has the virus. Add your phone to the COVID fight by going to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download it from the App Store or Google Play now. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of our free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. At least not so long as I have anything to say about it. And, of course, like with so many other things, having the microphone here, right here at Tall Tales gives me the last word on just about everything. Right, Jose?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Jose, for chiming in on that one.
It was fact-checked to be true.
Thank you. All right. So Jimmy Cotney is how we start off the program today. And we have something today from Brat Hoylman, a New York State senator, probably close friends of the USA Today editorial board. And the title of his little piece is, "It's Not a Trump Vaccine." It doesn't, so long as you want to say something bad about Trump, you probably got a pretty good shot of making it in the USA Today editorial board writing gigs. So I'm not going to waste any time on this. Unfortunately, the Post doesn't cover itself with glory today either. Title of the editorial, U.S. expects 100,000, as it were 100 million will be vaccinated in 3 months. Where will Guam stand? Yeah. And then they talk about, on Wednesday, Operation Warp Speed officials announced a breakthrough that gives hope that the Wuhan virus pandemic may be under control in a matter of months. And then we talk a little bit about the Operation of Warp Speed announced that enough doses of the vaccine will be available this month to immunize 20 million people. In January, U.S. will be able to release more doses to vaccinate 30 million additional people. And by the end of February, more doses will be available for 50 million more people. And if the Johnson & Johnson vaccine will also get emergency use approval by the FDA, there will be enough doses to vaccinate more than 100 million people in the United States by the end of February. Pfizer and Moderna vaccines will be the first two that will become available once the FDA gives emergency use authorization, expected any day now. The distribution of the vaccine will begin within 24 hours of FDA approval. An advisory panel of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on Tuesday recommended to the CDC that healthcare workers and senior citizens in group homes should take the first batch of Wuhan virus shots. I think I live in a group home. Yeah, me and my wife.
That's the group?
That's the group, yeah.
Big group. It's a tall group.
Yeah, it's a group of old folks, right? Yeah. The more detailed prioritization, Perna, will be up to the governor of each state or territory. Guam's detailed plan, along with that from the other territories and states, is due today for the Pfizer vaccine, which requires ultra-cold storage and a distribution handling system. A local plan for handling the Moderna vaccine must be submitted to the federal government in Operation Warp Speed by December 11. Well, the federal government provides the vaccines to be administered for free. This is the era of free stuff, right? Yeah. Ask not what you can do for your country. Ask what your country, demand what your country can do for you. We hope that now this is basically the only editorial in the whole editorial. We hope that Operation Warp Speed's announcements is giving. We hope that the Warp Speed's announcement is giving will arrive on Guam on time. While waiting, we should also not let, this is a limp rag instead of an editorial. It's a news story recouched as an editorial. And if you want to know everything, up to date on all these vaccines and timelines and who said what, go to the editorial. And then the only editorial part of it is we hope that the hope Operation Warp Speed announcement is giving will arrive on Guam on time. We'll watch the hope come swinging in.
And that was the last paragraph.
That's the penultimate paragraph.
Let's go through all that.
Yeah, to get down to that. And then while waiting, we should also not let down our guard. Wearing face masks and social distancing are still a necessity. It must have been one of those, somebody sitting in front of a typewriter, in front of a word processor saying, I only got 20 more minutes until my deadline. I got to say something. I'll copy this and paste it here and there. Yeah. I need a punchline. Okay, here it is. And away it goes. Very poor excuse for an editorial. Guam Daily Post, not even close to up to your usual high standards.
Denied.
There you go. All right, so then we swing to the card. And once again, the program notes on the card are posted on Tall Tales every day. You can find Tall Tales Tall Tales. This is Tall Tales, right? Posted on Jungle Watch every day. And you can find Jungle Watch just by typing in junglewatch.info into the search bar on your computer, and as if by magic, Jungle Watch will pop up. And then you can take a look at the program notes for today's show, the card for today's show, and enhance, if that's even possible, can you enhance the enjoyment gained by watching an episode of Tall Tales? I suppose it's at least theoretically possible. I quibble with, about magnifying an absolute, like, in the United States Constitution in the enacting clause. It says, in order to create a more perfect union. There are no degrees of perfection. If something is perfect, that's it. It can't be more perfect or more perfecter than something else. And it's kind of the same way with Tall Tales. The enjoyment reaches such a maximum level that it's hard to think in terms of enhancing the enjoyment gained by watching Tall Tales. But you can if you go to Jungle Watch, because the program notes and the card are posted before the show, and then shortly after the show, the video for today's issue of Tall Tales will pop up there. And unlike commenting on Facebook, you can comment on Jungle Watch, and you reach literally a worldwide audience. And your comments can be anonymous if you are looking for the shield of an anonymity for which to couch your admiring tones of Tall Tales. Or I don't know, this, again, theoretically it's possible, but your criticism of Tall Tales, I know it's theoretically possible, but it hardly seems that anyone would ever do it. So Jungle Watch for Tall Tales before and after. Your comments could be of great service to the international radio listening audience. I'm going to ask Jose to tell you how you can download the app for Tall Tales and the rest of the programming on 93.3. Go ahead, Jose.
Thank you, Bob. You can find the 93.3 The Point app on the Apple App Store and also on the Google Play. I guess that's an app store as well for Android users. So both places, if you have an Apple iOS device, which includes your MacBook, your iPad, or your iPhone, the Apple App Store is for you. And if you're using Android, such as the Samsung, the Google Play Store is for you.
Okay, very good. So I have it, and it's really nice. You carry Tall Tales with you wherever you go. What could be better than that?
I saw somebody listening to it today in São Paulo, Brazil.
Really?
We are an international reaching station.
An international radio listening audience, that's for sure. Yeah. Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Sao Paulo.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so turning to the card, I'm going to glance through the program notes here. We revisit Clint and Adrian's cheap shot as seen through the eyes of the former governor. That's on the card is Clint and Adrian Cruz versus Governor Gutierrez. We had a spirited series of phone calls dealing with this topic yesterday. It's whether or not marijuana fits into our tourism picture. So we had a pretty good series of phone calls. Seemed to be a lot of interest, so I thought I'd bring it back on the card today. One of the interesting calls that we received was from our Fred, who was quite adamant in his particular stance as to marijuana and our tourist industry. If we're lucky, perhaps our Fred will do a reprise this afternoon. So you don't want to run a risk of missing that. Second item on the card is GPD versus Susan Hogue. Yesterday, Susan learned a hard lesson about quarantine. That's how she made the card. But today, Susan issues a call to action. So the name Susan Hogue may become a little bit more popular than what it had been up until now. Next item on the card, Bob takes Justice Alito to the woodshed. I keep talking about it and I never get to it. BLM, this is Antifa. Our local social justice warriors, also known as the White Coats for Black Lives Matter, folks, are educated again. English is a microaggression for the left. And a new item on the card, lefties used to be the champions of free speech. Now they oppose it. Yeah. Okay, so first item on the card is Clint and Adrian Cruz versus Governor Gutierrez. And you remember the opening salvos in this particular bout, where when we had some people in the visitor industry come out and say, we don't want no stinking marijuana down here in Tucumán. And I'm using the phrase stinking in both the figurative, or actually all three, figurative, literal, and facetious sense. Because we had some reports yesterday that marijuana stinks. And this is one of the objections to it, that it doesn't smell very good. So Adrian Cruz said the waft of marijuana smoke is not as bad as the waft of hypocrisy coming from the tourist area where we've got strip joints and bars and massage parlors. And that's kind of what touched it all off. Adrian, although he came from relative obscurity, landed in the editorial page of the Post on Wednesday and spurred a lot of comment coming back, including from Senator Clint Ridgell, who I suppose we could call the father of recreational marijuana on Guam, because he's the one that picked it up and ran with it and got a bill through that required a rather laborious process to enact rules and regulations, which still aren't finished.
Does that make him Puff Daddy?
Perhaps it does, yeah. Puff Daddy, that's a good one, Jose. Give yourself a snare drum there. Very good, yeah. Okay, so some of the parameters here are that folks down in Tucumán are saying this is a family-friendly destination. People, our major markets are Japan and Korea. People like to bring their children down here, and the marijuana advertisement, marijuana smoke, the odor of marijuana in a restaurant, etc., is going to be counterproductive to the return of the profitable days of our tourist industry. The other side is, well, we had a referendum and the people approved marijuana, recreational marijuana in the referendum. So it's not the job of public officials to see how they could kind of put skids under the public will. It's their job to carry out what the public says they want. And I think that's kind of what our Fred was saying yesterday. So I can hear that, and then Clint comes along and he says, well, according to the Visitors Bureau's own figures, 66,000 tourists might be attracted by recreational marijuana. 66,000, which is literally a drop in the bucket, because we were shooting for 2 million tourists a year before the pandemic struck this year, and we got up to 1.6 million tourists last year. So to cater to 66 million, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then we had Mark Beldiga chime in. Mark Beldiga opened up the sandcastle down in Tucumán, which is, I don't know if we pay enough attention to the sandcastle. I've been in there a couple of times, both times with visitors from off island. It's a nice entertainment venue. And what it amounts to is a Las Vegas show without slot machines. It's a very high quality entertainment, very nicely done show, a nice bill. Everything about it is first class and is designed to attract the kind of tourists that we really need to have come to Guam. We've attracted the other end quite successfully. Before the pandemic, I remember walking out of King's in Tamuning and seeing Korean tourists pulling their wheeled suitcases down the sidewalk, having landed at the airport and pulled their suitcases all the way down to Tucumán. to some, probably some bootleg B&B type place. And you know, one of the newspapers said that Korean tourists are likely to go out and buy food at a grocery store, take it back to the room, and eat it. Whereas your sandcastle type tourists are the kind of guys that are kind of folks that are going to go to the high-end restaurants, stay in the fancy hotels, bring in lots of money.
Bodega has high production value, that's for sure.
Yeah, he really does. And I remember when he started that thing, you know, he was, as far as I knew at the time, he was just another guy.
Yeah, I think he started as a bartender here.
Could very well be, yeah. He didn't get off the plane with a suitcase full of money, and he came up with this ambitious project. And I think, you know, this guy over here, the nosy and the lazy boy, oh, he'll never make it here. There's no market for that kind of stuff. He's going to sink a lot of money into it. Well, I understand that his sandcastle is not only successful, but he has sandcastles in other locations in this part of the world. It has done so well. So when a guy like that opens his mouth and said, this isn't good for business, I'd have to say, well, I could say it anyhow. I'm all ears. And I know that the populist angle out there, yeah, he's not elected to office. Why does he have more say than we do? Why do people have to pay attention to him? Why don't they just get out of the way and let people smoke marijuana? And the answer is, it's money. You know, scrape all the paint and varnish off of it. A guy like Mark Beldiga, people that operate these resort facilities, attract money to our island. And that's what we have to have. We can't get along without it. Because we don't generate very much income here on the island. In order to generate income, you have to produce something. Well, we don't have any extractive materials here. We don't have any coal mines or nickel mines or oil wells or anything like that. Because of our size and location, we'll never be able to make a profit off of agricultural exports or animal husbandry or anything like that. It's not a very good place for manufacturing because we don't have raw materials, and two, we're so far from markets. So the only way that we're going to produce anything is by attracting others to our island who will bring money with them. The military is a fine example. The military spends a lot of money on this island that circulates through the island and pays a lot of wages and buys a lot of things for us. The other one is tourism, which is bigger than military now. Same thing. We have to be able to attract people from off island who will come to the island and bring money with them. Or we're going to go back to the leftist dream, the subsistence economy, where you got whatever you want, you got to grow it yourself. So I pay a lot of attention to people who have the ability to bring money to this island, because it's not something that you can get out of a book. It's not something that is easily learned. Some people have the ability to do it. Al Israel being a fine example. Brought billions of dollars to this island. Made millions of dollars himself. That's the way the system works. So if Mark Baldiga says this is not a good idea, then I tend to think this is probably not a good idea. If I were to match areas of expertise, Clint Rigel versus Mark Baldiga concerning the operation of our tourist industry, I think I'd probably go with Mark Baldiga. Yeah. Let's take a short break, and I'll come back here to Clint Rigel.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
We all need to fight COVID-19, and we need all the weapons we can get to beat it. Your smartphone can be one of the most powerful tools to battle this pandemic. The Guam COVID Alert Exposure Notification app can let you know if you've been exposed to someone who has the virus. Add your phone to the COVID fight by going to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download it from the App Store or Google Play now. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so coming back to Mark Baldiga, as I said, when it comes to tourism, I prefer his opinion to Senator Clint Rogel. Perhaps on marijuana, I might defer to Clint Rogel. I got an interesting post here from Colin Clark, who said, "I'm not a fan of tourism. I don't think we should concentrate on tourism. We should concentrate on education, tech schools, so we have smarter people on island who will stay on island and make better leaders." Well, what exactly are they going to lead?
Tourism.
Yeah, I mean, a leader has to have something to lead. If you're talking about better leaders, say in the Central Valley of California, you're talking about guys who want people, who understand agriculture, et cetera. Maybe I spent some time in Cleveland in 2008, and I was told that Cleveland, before everything got shipped to China, was chock full of machine shops. That it didn't make much difference what you wanted to make out of metal. You could do it in Cleveland. It was a very prosperous industrial city because of that. And I suspect that some of the leadership in Cleveland was a product of that expertise. But if we had schools that produced better leaders and nothing more, what is the end result? Unless we're producing something, there isn't much to lead. And then, Colin, I got to ask, we should concentrate on tourism. We should concentrate on education and tech schools. Where are we going to get the money to build the tech schools? We have a STEM curriculum that's in its infancy at the University of Guam. We have a department or a school system that's marginal at best, and we don't seem to be turning out people that go from here straight to Wall Street or Silicon Valley or Boeing or someplace like that. So I think if we're going to have good schools, skillful leaders, et cetera, we got to have an economy first. And the only economies that we have, and maybe we go out and find something else right now, are military and tourism. So you say you're not a fan of tourism. What would you replace it with? Well, anyhow, thanks for posting online on Facebook there, Colin. I'd really like to get this discussion going like we had it yesterday. I'm going now to the president of the Guam Visitors Bureau, who had some comments on the same subject. Guam Visitors Bureau President Carl Gutierrez says it's too soon for cannabis, that it threatens Guam's most important and reliable industry. Supporters of the cannabis industry say it's a financial boom waiting to happen, as well as an important step in diversifying Guam's economy. But Guam Visitors Bureau President Carl Gutierrez says it's too soon for cannabis and that it threatens Guam's most important and reliable industry. Gutierrez says that going all in on cannabis industry will threaten Guam's image as a family-friendly tourist destination. Now, I got to stop here for a second, too, and expose another one of my personal biases. As you all know, I'm not very much in favor of recreational marijuana. I cast my vote for medicinal marijuana, which of course never happened and never will happen because it's been overcome by recreational marijuana. And my sense is I don't see how we gain anything by adding one more mind-altering drug to the things available here on our island, legal or illegal. And then let's go to the family-friendly destination. I don't speak for anyone but myself, but on more than one occasion I've been to Las Vegas for one reason or another. Conference. I was there for a week for a conference one time. I couldn't wait to get out of Las Vegas. Of all the places in North America that you could go, that's right up there on top of one of my least favorite places to go. It's supposed to be a happy place where people have fun, but I would probably give you $10 for every smiling face you could find on anybody who lives there and works there. It's just not a happy place.
I've never been there before.
Yeah.
But I have worked at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, which is but in culinary. And that, if that's a snapshot of what Vegas is like, I can't imagine a whole bunch of Mohegan Suns in one area.
Yeah.
Eesh.
Yeah, it's not for me, from my evaluation, it's not a happy place. On the other hand, I've taken children and grandchildren to Disneyland, and I would go to Disneyland this week if someone would lend me a 10-year-old to take. I wouldn't care who's 10-year-old or what they look like or anything else. It's just so much fun to take a kid to Disneyland that I would do it. So if you're talking about family friendly, I think those are the two contrasts. So I think that we want to try to lean as much as we can in the Disneyland direction and as far away from the Las Vegas dimension as we possibly can. Going back to the remarks here of former Governor Gutierrez, Gutierrez says that going all in on the cannabis industry will threaten Guam's image as a family-friendly tourist destination. GVB president, as you were, supporters of the cannabis industry say it's a financial boom waiting to happen as an important step in diversifying Guam's economy. But Guam's Visitors Bureau President Carl Gutierrez says it's too soon. He told Newswalk's, News Talk K57's Patty Arroyo that although he thinks the island should hold off on the industry for now, he's not averse to eventually marketing Guam to cannabis travelers if visitor data supports it. Eventually, maybe, but right now we're a family market, and this is what we're getting out of our representatives in the source markets in Japan and Korea and Taiwan. They're asking and begging us not to put this in the mix because it is a negative thing for Guam. And you know the way the industry works. All of the major producers here on the island have relationships with companies in Japan, Korea, and a little bit in Taiwan. And those people can kneecap you if they don't like what you're doing. I'm sorry, I'm not going to send any of my customers to Guam because COVID virus, too much violence, marijuana, you name it. Because they're in business to make money also. Gutierrez said instead of cannabis, Guam should double down on its family-friendly image. He also says the business community should take advantage of the rapid availability of rapid testing kits on island. Gutierrez says GVB has been developing plans to safely reopen the island's business using rapid testing, restaurants in particular, and he said the governor's response to the plans have been positive. During a Cannabis Control Board meeting on Monday, board member Adrian Cruz accused GVB of hypocrisy when it comes to concerns about tarnishing Guam's family-friendly image. Cruz pointed out that a walk down Tuman would reveal non-family friendly establishments like strip joints, bars, and massage parlors. Gutierrez says adult entertainment venues are different because the activities they entertain happen behind closed doors. Nobody can say what's going on because I don't see it, and neither do the families see it. They may see a sign or two that leads to a back alley, but when you open up the cannabis, open to the public, open publicly, for example, on the sidewalks on Pleasure Island, it's different. You can't compare the two. And going back to Adrian Cruz, so if the bars, massage parlors, and strip clubs are an evil, so to speak, then the answer is to expand the evil, to have more of it. That would be the answer. Okay, I think I'm ready to rule here, unless anybody wants to post something else on Facebook or call in or something like that. I'm ready to rule on this matter. It's 888-8255 if you want to call in. And let's see, a little more with Colin Clark here. Yeah, let's see. I guess you got Ken Brown replying. I'm still in Northern California. If our area's ICU capacity falls below 15%, we'll be on a 3-week lockdown. He's talking about something else. Well, anyhow, Colin Clark comes in. It looks like he's responding to something. He says, marijuana will never go away. It's always been here.
I don't think the debate is about legalizing it. It's already legal. I think the debate is whether or not these companies, these tourism companies, want to promote it as a destination or a reason for a destination in Guam, which I think is a legitimate conversation. But the legalization of marijuana has already been determined.
We've already jumped off that bridge.
That already happened a long time ago.
Exactly.
It's here.
So if you want to lay out some pro-marijuana propaganda, marijuana is no worse than alcohol. In fact, it's actually better than alcohol. It's been around anyhow, so if it's not legal, we can't even regulate it. Those are all interesting things, but they don't belong in this discussion, because this discussion, as Jose has said, is about whether or not we should market Guam as a marijuana destination. Colin Clark goes on to say, we have alcohol and meth flooding the island. You really think that marijuana, which has always been here, will make a difference? Yeah. All right, let's see, probably it's our Fred. Okay, our Fred has been listening, and he took up my invitation. Thanks for chiming in, our Fred.
That's so funny. I took you up on your invite, our AG. So, Bob, I mean, the last time, so I want to, let's go talk about this. Last time I checked, the name of the island was Guam and not Mark Baldiga, or it wasn't Suniata.
I think there's a move to change it to Klitzkie, but it hasn't happened yet, our Fred.
So the last I checked, it was Guam, and the people who lived here were called the people of Guam, and not named after 3 or 4 people who own some businesses here. So No, I mean, I see you're advocating that we should not allow marijuana sales and businesses here.
No,
And,
no. What I'm saying is, I agree with former Governor Carl Gutierrez, Mark Baldiga, a half dozen civic organizations. We should not market Guam as a marijuana destination. That's what the argument is about.
You're right. You're right. We don't have to do that.
Yeah.
We can just promote it within our island, and when word gets out, it gets out, and when it doesn't, it doesn't, and whatever happens on its own, word of mouth will take over. And then there's Instagram and Facebook and bloggers and all that kind of stuff. But we don't have to actively promote it. You're right. And, we don't have to confine it to Harmon or Anigua. I mean, that's ridiculous. I think the 100 and maybe at least
Fred, we have a rule against using the word ridiculous in Tall Tales, but go on with
what do you use?
Well, you make your argument without branding, without a branding iron. Go ahead.
Okay. So, we have, there's no, like you said earlier, there's no industry here. And we cannot just have, military is not an industry. We're just trying to milk the military, as someone said. We're just milking them. And we're just a military base. And because of that, we get the federal aid and the help to, as a courtesy, I would say, or a payback to Guam for using the land. But that's not an industry. We call it an industry. An industry is like when you're actually making money selling something and doing something. That's an industry, putting people to work and producing something. So that's what we need to do. And if there's something comes up like marijuana and we can do it, then let's not stop that and just get out of the way. Like I said yesterday, get out of the way of business, private enterprise.
How about poppy fields, our Fred? Maybe we
opium.
Yeah,
that's a little bit more extreme type of narcotic. Marijuana is a medicinal, even opium is, but it's a different level or grade of narcotic, and they have different substance levels for these. But marijuana is just like alcohol. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to ban marijuana, might as well ban alcohol.
But we as we've made clear, we've crossed that. We've jumped off that bridge already. It's already legal to the extent that it can be legal given the state of federal law. So the question is, how do we want our tourist industry to be structured? We don't want, and I say we shouldn't have our tourist industry attempting to market Guam as a marijuana destination. As Mark Baldiga, former Governor Gutierrez, a half dozen civic organizations, et cetera, have come forward and said, now whether the name of the island is Guam or whatever it is, there are people that have particular interests that are going to speak out on the interests that they think are important, just like you're doing right now, our Fred.
Yeah.
And the ability of those people to command an audience has an awful lot to do with what they're saying and their power to persuade. And I'm persuaded by the things that those people have said. I'm not persuaded by what Clint Rigel said, and I'm turned off by Adrian Cruz's attempting to kind of take a childish approach to the whole thing, saying, well, we got bars down there, why can't we have marijuana?
Yeah. Well, Bob, we don't need to, so 2-3 things here. We don't need to promote and advertise it in the tourist magazines or so forth that we are a marijuana destination. It'll happen on its own through word of mouth. And, we're not inventing the wheel here either. It's being done everywhere, and those places are family-oriented, family image. Their image never got ruined, like Amsterdam, Colorado, or California. Their image did not get ruined.
I ruled on Amsterdam yesterday, remember, our friend?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I remember I mentioned that, and I went to Amsterdam, was there for about a week. I never went into one of the coffee shops where you could get marijuana. I didn't even know how to find one, and I didn't even know there was such a thing, except that I had read about it online. So
it's discreet. Yeah, it's discreet. Yeah.
Not on the street, online.
No, I mean it's discreet where
it's discreet. You're right. Yeah.
So same thing can apply here.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Arfred. That's exactly what I'm saying.
So we can do it.
I'm taking Mark Baldiga, Carl Gutierrez, and the half dozen civic organizations side against what Clint Rigel said, and trying to dismiss Adrian Cruz as just somebody who pops off with a cheap shot. That's how I see the discussion shaping up, and I think you're pretty close to seeing it the same way I see it, Arfred.
Okay. So to take away from this conversation, I don't think we need to prolong the discussion on this amongst the whole island. Saipan has already gone forward from us and beaten us to it. They already issued 3 licenses today for marijuana, by the way. We're behind. Saipan in many ways is moving forward pretty quick on a lot of fronts. So
somehow I don't think I want to be in that race. Saipan is just about ready to sink.
Saipan is the underdog, and they want to also be successful as an island and so forth. And they're watching.
I'll give you a good example here. We've had the same argument about gambling, casino gambling, that you and I are talking about now with marijuana. And the smart money was always, we need to have casino gambling. We could make so much money in taxes, et cetera. Saipan tried that. They hitched their wagon to that, and they're just about ready to sink as the whole thing really turned to ashes on them.
Yeah.
So I don't see Saipan as a very good role model for us, Arfred.
Right. No, they're not. They're not our role model, but they are looking at us as in Guam as a role model, and so forth. I know the casino industry is having some trouble right now because, of course, COVID exacerbated it and many other things. But we once upon a time were looking at casino in Guam, but the church shot it down. So that's another form of industry that could have happened by now, and we would have been like 10 years into it already. There's many, business is not going to be always in a nice, clean package with a bow on it. There's many types of businesses, and just so you know, massage parlors and all that, prostitution is the oldest form of business on this earth, going back to the time of Jesus Christ. So it's business. Prostitution is probably the oldest business compared to any other.
Not that I mean to censor you, Arfred, but I got to take a break here. So thanks a lot for calling in. Thank you, Arfred. And take a short break, and I'll come back to Senator Chris Duenas.
Coffee Day. I'm Chelsea Nicholas, and I'm the co-chair for this year's G is for Giving, as well as a proud alumna of the University of Guam. G is for Giving is an annual campaign that kicks off on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving and runs through the end of the year. Known as Giving Tuesday, it is an international day of giving, and this year's theme is Weaving Community. On Guam, we know a little something about weaving community, as we're all intertwined and interconnected in the spirit of Inafamalik. When one of us thrives, the island thrives. This is why I support G is for Giving's mission to support scholarships, programs, and research. As an alumna, I know how difficult it is to balance going to school and worrying about how you're going to pay for school. In these uncertain times, students are even more at risk because of economic hardship beyond their control. G is for Giving aims to bridge that gap and take away at least some of the burden. For more information on how you can give, visit give.uog.edu or call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 735-2957. Have a happy and safe holiday.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
So, approaching the big halftime show that we all have come to know and love, we got about 6 more minutes to the big halftime show. I can't think a better way of spending that 6 minutes than with Senator-elect Chris Duenas. Good afternoon, Chris.
Half a day, Your Honor, Honorable Marine, Senator, and my favorite talk show host. I can't, imagine a better way to spend 6 minutes myself, but I'll rush into it because I don't know that I can be pithy on this subject. I'm really, really in your court on this one, Bob. And I had a front row seat to the formulation of both policies, and you were discussing it yesterday. I wanted to jump in, but I didn't have time. So yes, we did have the bill on the referendum. The referendum passed by popular vote, and then of course the law passed, which went from medical to legalization, where we're currently at. And one of the things that happened during the time when I was a legislative liaison under Governor Calvo was many groups came to make this presentation to the administration on both medical and medicinal, and full legalization. And the criticism always was when the medicinal first went out, it was the legislature's punt the ball, really, because they were never going to fund. They were never going to come up with the money and do what needed to be done to stand up a medical program. And so the whole reasoning behind legalization was to be able to fund the whole kit and caboodle and get it moving forward. Bob, from day one, it didn't matter who you were talking to on the board of the Visitors Bureau and under the former leadership of Pilar Liguana and others. And of course, she was an institution there, having spent her career building tourism on Guam. This was a huge issue for them. Now, Bob, one issue, one of the reasons why it's not just Mark and Baldiga and others making this talking this way, it's because people like Will Parkinson and others who are complete advocates for this initiative and cannabis tourism. I confess I do watch other and partake in other forums other than my favorite show, which is this show. But this particular gentleman and others, have talked about the booming industry of basically going back to the days of Woodstock and having these huge marijuana concerts and all this crazy stuff down in Tumon. And one of the reasons why I ran for office on a balanced approach was the fact that I saw some advocates that were just basically take on a number of different issues, but particularly on this issue, just going hog wild. And so I agree with what you're talking about, and what the industry is talking about, Bob, is the fact that you need to really, really be careful how we tread down this road. Yes, I agree with our Fred. It's a business. You've already said, the law is in place. It is what it is. But the thing is that just because it's a business doesn't mean that we flip the script and become, a marijuana island just because that's the law of the land. And this is what we've got to be very careful about, Bob.
I couldn't agree more, Chris. And, we do the same. We do it with alcohol. You can only have so many alcohol licenses in each village, and, the hours are regulated and all that sort of thing. So it's certainly something that a government can do with respect to controlled substances, is to discourage their presence in certain places. And it goes without saying that not promoting it is clearly within the Guam Visitors Bureau, is within their area of expertise. We could, with a couple of Woodstock type events, we could ruin the whole thing and never get it back again. I'm just not willing to take that kind of risk.
Another thing, Bob, that you and I have been sticklers about is the government is notorious for being lazy and just bypassing what it needs to do. When I heard some of the discussion on the board, because they don't want to spend the money, they don't want to have the upfront money to put out the lab. To think that we would go forward now and go, oh, okay, well, you know what, we can bypass that one too. There's certain controls we can. Everything is about rushing to try to make a buck and not trying to do it right. That's why we're here. The whole notion that this that this legalization was going to be the panacea.
Chris, I got a break for the halftime show. You want to hang on or call back after the halftime show?
I'll catch up with you because I think we need to finish this point. Thanks a lot, Bob.
Thank you.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A new challenge to Georgia's election results. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump filing a challenge petition Thursday, contesting the results in Georgia. State lawmakers in a hearing Thursday were shown surveillance camera video from the counting center in Atlanta that shows a handful of workers who stayed behind after everyone else was told to leave, pull out boxes of ballots from beneath a table and count them. Attorney Jackie Pick asking,
what are these ballots doing there, separate from all the other ballots? And why are they only counting them whenever the place is cleared out with no witnesses? Is the question.
Other witnesses telling the hearing ballots were left unsecured. Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp on Fox's The Ingram Angle renewing his call for a signature audit of the ballots.
Secretary of State, per the laws and the Constitution, would have to order that. He has not done that. I think it should be done. I think, especially with what we saw today, it raises more questions. There needs to be transparency on that. I would again call for that.
A judge in Nevada's capital city also hearing arguments Thursday from the Trump campaign to hold up the election results in the Silver State, charging widespread fraud. President-elect Biden has asked Dr. Anthony Fauci to stay on as his chief advisor on the coronavirus and tells CNN that he would be willing to be publicly vaccinated.
Dr. Fauci says we have a vaccine that is safe. That's the moment in which I will stand before the public.
Mr. Biden also saying he will order mask wearing on all federal property and on interstate transportation. He'll also ask Americans to voluntarily wear masks for a period of 100 days on Inauguration Day. Charleston, West Virginia police officer Cassie Johnson has been removed from life support 2 days after being shot in the face while investigating a parking dispute. Her service to the public continues. Her family says several of her organs were donated for transplant. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Holiday wishes from President Trump Thursday, moments after the First Lady mashed the button to light up the national Christmas tree.
On behalf of Melania and the entire Trump family, Merry Christmas to all, and best wishes for a very, very great and happy New Year.
But on social media, the president repeating his threat to veto the defense authorization bill, hammered out by a bipartisan congressional committee to fund the military in 2021. Because it doesn't remove liability protection for social media companies, the president says he will not sign it. It's believed Congress has the votes to override a veto. Congress apparently getting closer to a compromise coronavirus relief package.
Support is gathering for a $908 billion coronavirus proposal introduced earlier this week by a bipartisan group of lawmakers. It is far less than Democratic leaders have previously supported. Still, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer say it should serve as a starting point.
Of course, we and others will offer improvements, but the need to act is urgent.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell also believes compromise is within reach.
We know where we agree. We can do this.
But McConnell is pushing for a more targeted plan worth about $500 billion he says has the support of President Trump. In Washington, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Potentially good news for home buyers, if not investors. Long-term mortgage interest rates edged lower this week, reaching record lows for the 14th time this year. Mortgage finance giant Freddie Mac says the average rate on a 30-year fixed-rate home loan slipped to 2.71%, down a 1/100th of a point. The average rate on a 15-year fixed-rate loan declined to 2.26%. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show, starring Senator Mana Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mana Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today, like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience. Buying a house, apartment, or condo, selling your home or property, or maybe you're renting a house, apartment, or condo on Guam. Whatever your real estate needs are, you can count on the professionals at Horizon Properties to take care of you. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonproperties.com or follow them on Facebook at Horizon Properties Guam. Maria Miller and the professionals at Horizon Properties. All you need to know in real estate. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So we finish up the big halftime show that we all enjoy so much, and right on cue, Senator-elect Chris Duenas pops into the green room. Welcome back, Chris.
Happy Bob. Thanks for allowing me to, once again finish my comments. But maybe just as a recap before we left the break, once again I had a front row seat at the whole process of, first of all, the initiative passing by the legislature, because there wasn't enough votes to pass the initiative, even for medical first round. So to pass it on the floor. So it went to initiative passed. Good enough. The people of Guam voted for it. It became law. After that, it narrowly passed in this current legislature 8-7 for legalization. During that whole time, for cannabis, marijuana, that whole policy, there was a constant fumbling of the ball and the inability of the legislature to go ahead and just promulgate the rules and regs, probably for political reasons. So that was punted and said, let's put this commission together. The commission is formulated. We are now in, again, the next 2 years, going into 4 years of policy that is now basically just finally released for review in terms of current rules and regs. Now, I, for one, don't think that this legislature should even entertain for one moment passing those rules and regs, because they're just been released and this next 36th Guam legislature should be the one that has the authority to pass or whatever we do with those rules and regs as proposed. Now, one of the main reasons why I discussed my understanding of Mark Bordiga and the tourism industry's concern about the current issue is there are individuals on that board that were appointed that are very, very extreme in terms of their views on cannabis, marijuana, for it to be ultra liberal. I'm talking about like I said, William Parkinson talking about we're getting inquiries about, having big, concerts, productions, promoting Guam as, come here, cannabis is here, you can come out here and have big old parties and everything else, and all that's going to go down. That's real, Bob. That is recorded on other shows in terms of that position, and that position is very concerning. And so when you look at these rules and regs, I wanted to finalize by saying the legislature also not ever prioritizing a lot of times when it wants to do something but not putting any money forward, never stepped up to the plate and said, here's the money for a lab. It is the key thing that any jurisdiction, when they want to venture into this issue, because I keep hearing this, it's just like alcohol, it's just like alcohol. The only time it's just like alcohol is if you can put a label on it that says this is exactly what it contains, and there's an understanding of exactly what the product has in it so that the consumer can be protected if they decide to imbibe. I, for one, as a senator in the 36th, will not allow I will introduce legislation to not allow any type of sale without a laboratory. And I know that that's one of the things the board is taking up right now to try to bypass, because first of all, probably our financial situation and the inability to stand it up, but also just because of laziness. And that's why the whole alacrity on this issue, I think, is why our tourism industry and folks like Governor Gutierrez and Mark Bordiga and others are saying, whoa, we're trying to bring our tourists back. We're trying to rebuild our economy. We're trying to get back on our feet. I don't think that you change your whole model in the middle of the game when you're trying to rebuild, re-invite people back. Now, granted, I know I've heard the argument about, supposedly hypocrisy and all this other stuff. There are things that many people don't like that go on in 2 months. And if you're in that position, Adrian and others, then advocate for the elimination of that, not for the addition of other things that are going to provide for detracting from what Guam really should be. I know I've said a lot, Bob, but I just wanted to see if your thoughts were along the lines of what
you're right on point, Chris. I'm really glad that you're going to be sworn in next month. A reasonable approach to this, as opposed to, well, I think marijuana is good. We could bring in a lot of money for it. And besides that, I used to smoke it myself, which passes for reasoning in a lot of quarters. Thanks for calling, Chris.
Sure, Bob. We've been led down that road a lot of times, and this is one time when if there's anything to be said is get it right. Hurry, but don't rush. Maybe don't even hurry.
And you make a really good point about this legislature should not approve those rules. They should be resubmitted to the 36th.
Yeah, I think it would be an absolute disservice, and I'm just making that call now. That I think the people of Guam should make that call now too. That these rules and regulations should not be passed by the 35th. They've only recently been released. And I remember even the rules and regs for Chamorro Land Trust and others, have took years and years and years to develop and be discussed and everything else to be passed. And I think it would be a complete disservice for them to be passed now. And I also think that Guam the people of Guam should understand that the realization of marketing a product such as this, it should absolutely require a laboratory. And one of the reasons why there was always discussion of, oh no, we can just get other jurisdictions or the like to kind of have a formula and what? No, because first of all, you can't transport across lines. So that wouldn't even work in terms of trying to get the product tested. But that's something that if we're really going to be true to doing this, if we're going forward with this, it should require the same type of laboratory to certify what's in that product, so that we don't have liability issues, and so that anything for retail has to have that stamp on it.
Good call, Chris.
Thank you, Bob. Always appreciate joining you. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. I know this is the bummer time of our show, but I call it ours because I like to be with you. But we'll see you on Monday.
Okay, Chris. Thanks for calling. Yeah, Fridays are tough for Jose and I. I've only got about 45 more minutes of doing what I really love doing until we got to take a 70-hour break over the weekend with no tall tales. Well, I had already ruled on the question of whether or not we want to be a marijuana destination, and had there been any doubt in anyone's mind, I think Senator-elect Chris Duenas really sealed it up for us. And it reminded me of a couple of things that I'd temporarily forgotten. In order to do this, you need a lab and you need an infrastructure. You can't just say, well, I grow marijuana in my backyard, so I'm going to buy this packaging machine and start selling it at Payless. You can't do that. And just like alcohol, there are rules in alcohol as to how much alcohol a particular product contains. If it's beer, there's a limit at how much alcohol it can be in it and still call it beer. And for liquor, it says on the bottle what the proof is. So with marijuana, as I understand marijuana, it comes in all different kinds of strengths, etc. And I've read already about places where it's legal and it's made into things like candy or gumdrops or things like that. And people sit down and they really screw their heads up because they eat too much of it and they don't know how powerful it is. So this whole thing with the lab, of course, in the beginning, it was all presented, well, there'll be a lab and there'll be this and there'll be that, etc. And it'll be medicinal. And of course, we know the whole medicinal was what in boxing you'd call a fake. You look like you're going to get out there and lead with your left, but you're really coming up with an uppercut with your right hand.
Even though it kind of was telegraphed.
Exactly, yeah. So, and then of course, now that you could grow your own at home, there'll never be any medicinal marijuana. There'll be no demand for it. And if it ever goes to the point where it is actually at retail, even less demand. So the whole thing was a very interesting, as Jose says, bait and switch. And now we're kind of stuck with it. But I'm glad that there are some reasonable heads that may prevail in the next Guam legislature when this matter, we would hope, will come up for a final decision. Okay, so going on to the next item on the card, this is Susan Hogg. And let's see, what did I say about Susan Hogg? Hogue, not Hogg. Susan Hogg.
Not Hoagie?
Not Hoagie or Hoagie.
Not Hoagie? That's not a Chamorro name.
Yeah, say Hoagie, nay. Gogui. Gogui. It rhymes with Hoagie, yeah. So yesterday I said, Susan learns a hard lesson about quarantine. Now she's got a call to action. This is an article from the Post. Susan Leslie Hogue was handcuffed after she arrived at the Wanpad Airport on Tuesday from Honolulu. I cried a little. I was handcuffed and put in the back of a van. I was put in a holding cell. Hogue had the arrest record recorded and appeared to remain in good spirits even as she was placed into the transport van, and his Guam police officer booked her and took her fingerprints. Police said she was arrested for failing to comply with a mandatory public health ordered quarantine. The Office of the Attorney General will decide whether to prosecute Hogue. She is now in quarantine site at the Dusit Beach Resort in Tumon. I'm in a hotel that I can't even step 1 foot out into the hall. I can't leave. When I stop and think about it, I'm blown away, she said. Hogue has called Guam home since early March. She has lived on the island with her son, daughter-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. On Tuesday, she arrived on Guam after spending about 5 weeks checking on her home and family in California. She said she was unaware of the quarantine requirements and had hoped to self-quarantine at home, just as she did when she first got to Guam earlier this year. Yeah, but that was then. This is now. Hogue recalled her encounter with the airport police prior to her arrest. I told them that I would happily, voluntarily quarantine at home, but if it's voluntary, I'm definitely not going to the hotel. I will be responsible. I care about people and their health, especially the elderly. I knew there was something about this lady that I liked, yeah. I will absolutely wear my mask and quarantine at home. They said, no, you can't do that. She said, I didn't want to make a scene. I just quietly said, no, I'm not going to do this. She also declined to sign an involuntary quarantine form. I've been doing a lot of research about Wuhan and virus and lockdowns. I wear my mask all the time. I social distance. We've got to start saying no and trusting that most citizens are going to be responsible and make sure our elderly in our communities are not affected. We got to start having the government not tell us everything we need to do. We've got to start saying no. Yeah.
Channeling her inner Nancy Reagan.
Just say no to Gov Guam, right? Yeah. She has since reached out to the Public Defender Service Corporation. She reached out. All right. The PDSC was appointed by the court to represent passengers in the government's quarantine site. Well, this is a little different. Whether or not the Public Defender Service Corporation will provide representation for her. Passengers are currently allowed to take a Wuhan virus test on their 6th day in quarantine, and if the test results are negative, then they can complete the remainder of their 14-day quarantine at home. However, Hogue said it should be her choice whether to get tested. I'm not going to get the test because I'm not sick. It's not like this executive order was put in place for a future pandemic because no one would have ever gone for that. What would you do in a pandemic? You isolate the people who are sick. You don't isolate the people who are not sick because that destroys economies. That destroys people's lives. It's okay to say no. If we don't start saying no and using our rights, we're going to lose them. So, perhaps a new champion of civil disobedience, Susan Hogue. We've got to say no. She'll fit right in with the morning show, I think. Yeah.
So too.
Yeah, well, good call, Susan Hogue, and I hope it works out for you.
She didn't read the article then that said we got to pay extra for rooms not being used.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we might as well fill them up. We got to
fill them up.
Might as well. We got to pay for them anyhow, right? Okay, so next item on the card is Democrats versus Big Law. And I have an article here. It goes back for quite a while. But it says, big firms retreat from Trump. GOP reveals increasing vulnerability to public relations offensive. Crisis communication pros say the majority of law firms do not have the adequate resources to respond to a, quote, multi-front war of social media, paid media protests. The activist campaign launched against law firms representing President Trump and the GOP have shown that a concentrated, mostly digital public relations offensive can have a material effect on law firms both internally and externally. Some communications professionals even see the campaign, given its resonance, as a template for activists going forward. Now, I got to stop here for a second, and needless to say, I'm going to stick up for lawyers. And I've explained this before, there are a couple of bad apples in every barrel. And as far as lawyers are concerned, it's just 98% of the lawyers that give the other 2% a bad name. Yeah, I like lawyer jokes, but of course somebody once upon a time said, you know how many lawyer jokes there are? Answer, no, how many? None. They're all true stories. Yeah. But, lawyers have the job of giving people and companies representations, even when those people or companies are not popular. They don't fit into the current tide of things. So even despicable criminals, even Charlie Manson had a lawyer. So the most essential element in a criminal justice system is defense lawyers. You can't put anybody in prison unless he's represented by competent counsel. So lawyers are, if anything, a necessity in a free society. And, the whole idea here between among people who are Donald Trump supporters is that Donald Trump has it in his mind that he has some legal grievances. So when people are in that situation, what they do is they hire lawyers. And lawyers go out and figure out the best arguments that they can bring before the court to support their client's positions, even if their client is very unpopular. Of course, Trump is not very unpopular. He's about half the people in the United States wanted him to be president of the United States. But the half that he's not popular with is the half of the country that thinks it's not necessary. It's more to the half that he's not popular with would not be satisfied with engaging in a debate and winning a debate, or engaging in an election and winning an election. In order for the other half, the liberals, the left, to be satisfied, they have to not only win, they've got to destroy their opponents. Cancel culture. And this is another example here. So that large law firms that have signed on to represent Trump have been treated the same way as some of the folks in Portland have. The lefties have contacted clients, say, your firm is representing Donald Trump in one of those election controversies. I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to have you. We're going to be one of your clients. This kind of stuff. So, if you do that, it's hard to sympathize with lawyers. They're not the most sympathetic figures in the country. But once you destroy people who have unpopular views, ability to be represented by competent counsel, and you can kiss the First Amendment goodbye. Because the First Amendment, it all goes back to Susan Hogue here. If you just go along with every restriction and you don't stand up to it, whatever you think your rights are going to be gone pretty quickly. And the fact that the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law, what does it say again here? Exact words. Congress shall make no respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. So as soon as the left gets to the point where it can scare law firms out of the market to represent those who would advocate speech that may not be popular, that amendment is gone, just as surely as if it were repealed. So this is really a bad signal that that the left is sending. It's not a surprise, not a surprise at all. Okay, let's break for the seventh inning stretch here, and I'm going to come back to Justice Alito.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, I've promised this for a few days on the card. Now it's my time to take Justice Alito to the woodshed. And, of course, you know that we have liberal and conservative judges on our Supreme Court. Alito is one of the so-called conservative justices whose reasoning I generally tend to opt in for. Being a conservative myself, but I hold justices to a high standard of good behavior, and Justice Alito has violated that standard. And it's written up by Jonathan Turley, my favorite legal columnist, and he says, Justice Sam Alito is making headlines after his speech last night as a keynote at this year's all-virtual Federalist Society National Lawyers Convention. Alito slammed pandemic measures and attacks on free speech in his remarks to the convention, including the crackdown on, quote, unfashionable views in our society. Something I just talked about myself, but I can do it. I'm a talk show host. I probably should be a justice on the Supreme Court. I don't think I'll make it, but probably, but I have a great ability to speak on all kinds of things here as a talk show host. Okay, Turley says, I happen to agree with some of his points, but I have great reservations over a justice speaking on issues that are likely to come before him on the court. Indeed, I have long been a critic of the Supreme Court justices engaging in public appearances where they hold forth on contemporary issues. Me too. Just shut up and stay home, justices. I have been particularly critical of the late Justice Antonin Scalia, as have I. Yeah, the darling of the conservatives. He says, I have been particularly critical of the late Justice Antonin Scalia and Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who clearly relished appearances before ideologically supportive groups. Said, she just dreaded Trump being elected president. She said that publicly. Justice Alito addressed attacks on religious liberty and free speech, including citing past cases and disputes before the court. He also declared, quote, the COVID crisis has highlighted constitutional fault lines in attacking such rights. Pandemic limits are a subject of petitions before the court as well as major cases working through the federal system. Alito also launched into liberals who he views as threatening religious rights, noting that, quote, In certain corners, religious liberty is fast becoming a disfavored right. Alito attacked the Obama administration's, quote, protracted campaign and, quote, unrelenting attack against the Little Sisters of the Poor. He also criticized a Washington state for requiring pharmacies to provide emergency contraception. He maintained that such emergency contraception destroys an embryo after fertilization. All of those issues have been and will again be before the court. Indeed, as Alito was making these ill-considered comments, the Catholic Church was coming before his court in these very issues. There are a number of cases on the docket and pending review that include issues raised by Alito in his public remarks. Those litigants are entitled to justices who are not speaking publicly on the merits of such claims. That is exactly right. And that's why I feel it's necessary for me to take him to the woodshed. Torley says, I admittedly hold a more traditional and cloistered view of public role of justices. We have seen in the last couple decades more and more public speaking by justices in both books and speeches on contemporary issues. I have called this trend the rise of the celebrity justice. Ruth, the incredible Ruth Bader Ginsburg, classic example. But, you know, if we're going to criticize her, then we got to do the same thing for Alito when he acts the same way. It's worth noting that many liberals are objecting to Alito's speech despite celebrating even more alarming public speeches by Justice Ginsburg during her life. Throughout her career, Justice Ginsburg triggered controversies over public comments where she joked that she would move to New Zealand if Donald Trump is elected. Yeah. Ginsburg apologized for that controversy. While she expressed regret in that instance, it did not deter Ginsburg in continuing to speak publicly and hold forth on contemporary issues. There were speeches that electrified the left and built her persona as the notorious RBG. Sort of the Supreme Court's equivalent to Carl Nelson, the most dangerous man in the room. Yeah. Justice Scalia also routinely engaged in public speeches, and I criticized him more than one time on Tall Tales for doing that. Not to mention his myopia when it came to reading the words, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The trend is obviously toward greater public roles of justices in our political and social debates. These public controversies highlight the glaring contradiction in the use of the, quote, Ginsburg rule. The rule is often cited by nominees in refusing to discuss issues or cases in confirmation hearings that might come before the court. It is a rule that is based on the principle of judicial ethics for all jurists. It is not just confined to confirmations. It applies to any justices and judges in discussing such issues at any time outside of court. Yet after refusing to answer even generalized questions in these hearings, justices proceed to speak publicly on the very same questions once they're confirmed. Indeed, some justices seem to maintain a fan base or constituency on the right or the left in these speeches, a serious challenge to the tradition of neutrality expected of our justices. Once again, my agreement with some of these points does not alter the concern over the messenger rather than the message. And I have to say, I agree with everything that Alito said, But if he were here, I'd still slap him down because he's just dead wrong. Supreme Court justices have the ability to speak during oral argument when literally the whole world is dwelling on every word they say. They have the ability to write decisions that literally the whole world pays a whole lot of attention to. They don't need to act like talk show hosts. That's my job. Okay, Turley says, I still maintain that the price of being one of 9 on the highest court is that you refrain from such public roles in our contemporary and political debates. That's not much to ask. Justices should not have constituencies or public personas to maintain. They should speak primarily, if not exclusively, through their opinions. Yeah, so there you go, Justice Alito. From now on, I can sum it up in just 2 words. When you're not in court, shut up. May it please the court. Yeah. Okay, next I've got BLM versus Antifa. And I've spent a lot of time talking about BLM versus Antifa, although so far we haven't had to deal with BLM and Antifa here on the island. We haven't had any looting or arson or riots or things like that. We've had some very gullible people who kind of signed up as fellow travelers with Black Lives Matter.
We had our own police shooting.
We did. Yeah, we did. And it showed that, you know, even though we had 2 people shot by the police, no arson, no rioting, no looting. So I suspect it's another one of those. It's not what the people on Guam did, Jose.
It's what they didn't do.
Yeah. Okay, so here's an article that ran a little while ago. Antifa and Black Lives Matter may appear on the surface to be united in wanting to overturn society, but how that goal is accomplished is causing friction between the 2 groups. Black Lives Matter says thanks, but no thanks to Antifa when the anarchists claim to be standing up for racial justice. The LA Times reports on Black Lives Matters activists in Portland trying to wash their hands of Antifa violence while working for reforms beyond defund the police. I don't trust either one of them. I see a little scapegoating going on here. When people set fire to a building, it really does not liberate me one bit, said Mingus Maps, a black resident who won a seat on the Portland City Council this month. It does the opposite. It fuels the political culture that makes racism possible. We're going to get out of the game of smoke bombs and rubber bullets and dressing cops up like they're Marines as we stand outside public buildings and yell at each other, he said. The anarchists believe working within the system is futile and say the political order and capitalist economy must be torn down. I got news for you, Mr. Maps. That's exactly what Black Lives Matter folks said from the very beginning. Therese Cullors, for instance. But using the violence to amplify your voice makes you a party to it. Black Lives Matter leaders are apparently oblivious to that fact. They think they can pick and choose which sort of violence they can embrace and what they must condemn. In June, black community leaders denounced an arson attack by protesters on a building that houses a police station and black-owned businesses on Northeast Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. When I hear about somebody burning something down, I think about that as an act that always has been used against black people. Ron Herndon, a longtime black activist, said at a news conference the morning after police used tear gas to disperse protesters firing paintballs. You're not helping us. So I see it this way. You got this group called Black Lives Matter We spent a fair amount of time on the program here talking about who started it, that they're Marxist, what their objectives are. Their objectives are obviously to bring about some kind of a revolution in the United States. They're not reformers. They're revolutionists. Black Lives Matter appears to be the military arm, as you were. Antifa appears to be the military violence arm of Black Lives Matter, who want basically the same things. They're just not tied to the Marxist doctrine so tight. And then you have your common, ordinary black person, like this guy Ron Herndon, are saying, you know, all this stuff you're doing is not helping us a bit. It's hurting us. Going back to the article, as for Antifa, they are basking in their newfound celebrity as they seek to provoke the police even more. But where Black Lives Matter activists apparently believe the election of Joe Biden is an opportunity for major reforms, Antifa saw the election as meaningless. Two capitalists vying to run a corrupt system. It took the anarchists 20 minutes to make their way through the their Lakehurst neighborhood, as were the Laurelhurst neighborhood, November 8, and arrive at the County Democrat Party headquarters on November 8, right after the election. Tall plate glass windows lined the former car dealership on two sides, festooned with campaign posters for Biden and other candidates. Two activists approached the building, one holding an umbrella to conceal the other, who spray-painted an anti-Biden on the wall, adding an anarchist symbol in red. He wrote, ACAB, short for All Cops Are Bastards. 6 more protesters pounded on the windows, shattering 13 of them before rejoining the group, keeping watch in the parking lot. Black Lives Matter is as much responsible for the violence in the streets as Antifa. They have given the mostly white radicals a cause, a racial justice, and the BLM mantle grants legitimacy to the rioters in the eyes of the media, that's for sure. It should also be noted that much of the violence, looting, and arson in big cities was carried out by organized black gangs who had nothing to do with Antifa, but may have had connections to Black Lives Matter. At the very least, some BLM activists actively defended the violence, burning and looting. It equates like, well, this is reparations. Yeah. You can't have it both ways. At least you shouldn't be able to. In today's media climate, where Black Lives Matter can do no wrong, no one will call them to account. But you can't allow Antifa to piggyback their demonstrations onto yours, stand in solidarity with them on front lines of protest, use the violence they foment as a way to augment and heighten your message, and then expect to disavow them when they are no longer needed. But BLM is likely to get away with it because to question their integrity is racist. That's me, I'm a racist. And it's only done by white supremacists. Guilty as charged.
It's another attack on the First Amendment.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, let's break. We're going to head down the home stretch here in a minute, so let's take a short break.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Okay, here we are in the home stretch here on Tall Tales. I got about 10 more minutes, and Jose and I are going to turn into pumpkins or something like that. Our Cinderella life is over. The joy of our life comes to an end. We won't be able to do Tall Tales for another 70 hours. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a real struggle. We will, however, survive, and we will be back on Monday at 1600. So I'm going to go head down the down the sidewalk, down the home stretch here from Churchill Downs. But I did want to remind you once again that Tall Tales episode today, the video will be on Jungle Watch shortly. You can go to Jungle Watch, pick up on anything that you missed, and make comments that you may have wanted to make during the show but couldn't or didn't want to be identified. You can make anonymous comments on Jungle Watch, and I check Jungle Watch every day, so I'll be interested to see what you say on Jungle Watch about today's show, about marijuana, tourism, or whatever turns you on. Okay, I bet this is Drive-Through Jack. No. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, it's R. Keith, who was going to call before the big halftime show. It's Drive-Through Jack's time of the day. That's why I thought it would be him. Good afternoon, R. Keith.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Jose. How you doing? Tell you, the two violent mobs, BLM and Antifa, have been awfully quiet since the election. What happened?
Well, they're still doing it in Portland. It just that they aren't getting the kind of coverage that they had gotten up until now. But
okay, I have been missing that then, because I was going to posit a variation on a expression that the two of you used, that it's not when they are rioting, but when they're not rioting.
Uh-huh.
And why that may be. And this seeming duplicitousness of BLM, where they are allied with Antifa when it suits them and separate from them when it suits them. I find that similar behavior between these two and the Democrat Party. They will use BLM and Antifa as evidence, essentially useful idiots, evidence of some type of issue that they can push. And then when cornered on it, oh, no, we have nothing to do with that. We condemn such things.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
That's why I refer to them both as just simply Democrat Party brown shirts.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And people that subscribe to that quasi-Marxist type ideology are not troubled by such minor details as principles.
Yeah, all that matters is the agenda.
Yeah, the issue is never the issue. The revolution is the issue, and the switching from one side to the other is classic. The classic tactic of those who are unprincipled. Hitler came to power because he was an anti-communist, right? That's how he generated so much support in Germany. And then what did he do in 1939? He signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union so they could divide Poland in two.
Yeah, consistency has never been the sake of extremists.
That's for sure.
If we had a real media, that would be, much more known to all, but unfortunately we don't.
No, not anymore.
Well, just wanted to throw that out there.
That's a good observation, Arky. Thank you very much for calling, and we'll see you on Monday, okay?
Have a nice weekend, guys.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to have a nice weekend, Jose. Jonesing over no tall tales, but we'll survive somehow, I guess.
The weather's trying to help us. It's supposed to be dry.
Oh, well, that'll help.
A little.
Yeah. Okay, I got about 6 more minutes here, so I got more Black Lives Matter stuff here on the national scene. And this is Black Lives Matter versus White Coats for Black Lives Matter, our local gang. You remember not long after George Floyd died, you notice I didn't say was killed or murdered. He died because as far as I've been able to ascertain, he died of a heart attack brought on by an overdose of fentanyl, not from suffocation. But remember, we had a group of people dressed in white coats down on Skinner Plaza. They were white coats for Black Lives Matter, doctors and nurses who were in support of Black Lives Matter and racial justice. And I suppose you could excuse a little naivete in the beginning, but I never heard anybody come forward and say, yeah, that really wasn't a very good idea. Black Lives Matter is not a civil rights organization. It's a gang. So here's another lesson for you, you local white coats for Black Lives Matter. This is something I got from a really good email source called Lou Rockwell, and it's titled, "This is a Marxist Revolution." In our recent posts, we've tried to show that the upheaval that is presently convulsing this country is in reality a neo-Marxist revolution in progress. Despite the many obvious signs, most people in this country are still oblivious to this. Not only do they not recognize that this is an attempted revolution, the idea that it could be Marxist one seems completely implausible. Most Americans think of Marxism as some bugaboo that is periodically brought up by wild-eyed alarmists who see a Bolshevik under every protest banner. They believe that this ideology has long been discredited, and no one in their right mind would take it up as a viable way of looking at the world. In this, they are only half correct. Even though it is true that history has shown Marxism to be dead wrong, Marxism is far from being dead as a worldview. Quite to the contrary, it is very much alive. It shapes, directly or indirectly, the worldview of many in the American intelligentsia, many of whom hold important posts in universities, in the media, and in government. To be sure, most of these individuals do not openly present themselves as traditional Marxists. Many of them, in fact, even concede that classical Marxism is flawed, having failed to deliver on its promises and predictions. This attitude gives these ideological mutants an air of seeming reasonableness and objectivity, but they will not let go of Marx's basic assumptions. Having retained Marx's core insights, they either modify his theories on the edges or develop them in new directions. As a result, in the last 80 years, we have witnessed a proliferation of philosophies and theoretical systems derived from Marx's teachings. Here's a partial list. Critical race theory, which we've talked about on the show, which the government, according to what I read, Joe Biden is going to put it back as a mandatory education program for government employees. Critical race theory, the Frankfurt School, liberation theology, critical theology, black theology, Maoism, the Praxis School, Neo-Leninism, autonomism, Austro-Marxism, the Budapest School, Neo-Marxism, structural Marxism, cultural Marxism, and so on down the line. Libertarian Marxism, Marxist feminism, Marxist theology. Even though the theoretical system above deal with many different aspects of the life of the individual and society, they grew from the same poisoned Marxist root. Yet despite their ignoble origin, most of these schools of thought are considered acceptable, if not outright respectable. I'm going to keep on this because I think it's really important that we all understand this. So I'll pick this up on 1600 on Monday. Jose and I are going to go into hibernation. We'll see you on Monday at 1600. Adios.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
More election challenges. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. An attorney for the Trump campaign telling a judge in Nevada late yesterday they have evidence that more than 20,000 people without a valid Nevada address voted in the presidential election, and more than 42,000 people voted more than once. An attorney for the Biden campaign calling it a desperate attempt to overturn the will of the people, the judge asking for written briefs in the morning. The campaign says they now have video evidence of vote counting fraud in Georgia, showing state lawmakers Thursday surveillance camera footage from the Atlanta vote counting site that Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani calls damning.
We presented 4 videotapes from 4 security cameras showing the Democrats throwing the Republicans out, claiming there was a water main break, which is a lie. Once the Republicans left, they took ballots out from under a table where they had it hidden, looked like thousands and thousands of ballots, and while the Republicans weren't there all night, counted the ballots. That's on tape.
Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp says Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger should call for a signature audit of the ballots, telling Fox's The Ingram Angle.
I think in the next 24 hours, hopefully we'll see a lot more from the hearings that the legislature had today, and we'll be able to look and see what the next steps are.
Joe Biden won Georgia by about 15,000 votes. With some areas of his state running dangerously low on available hospital beds, California's Governor Gavin Newsom says more restrictions are coming.
The bottom line is if we don't act now,